All right, welcome to my screen. I'm going to be sharing with you a little bit about doing some comps. So you just call this comps with Kyle right now, and that way you can kind of get educated on how we look at value in the MLS system. This could become a long video because I'm doing it off the cuff and I don't want to miss anything. And if you're an appraiser, go ahead and mention and any comments or questions that you have below. But here's our subject property right here. This property is a 3,100 square foot, 4-bedroom, 3 full bathroom home that was built in what looks like it's in here somewhere in the date 2019. Effective built year is 2019. The lot's not super important. It's not crazy large. I want to preface this by saying, like, we're looking at value to try to determine where a home is going to sell as a real estate agent, but we're also looking at where we believe it would appraise to, mainly because in our market, we're usually somewhere around like 20% cash sales. Sometimes it goes up to 30, and in the heyday in 2013, condos were at 90% cash sales for 1 month. So sometimes it changes, but for the most part, it's around 20 to 30% of our marketplace. And so with the understanding of that, that means that any home that isn't a cash offer, so the other 70 to 80% of homes that close in our market, they're going to be subjected to usually an appraisal. They could waive it if for some circumstances, but long story short, that means that what's important about the appraisal is that in the event that the home value comes in low, say it's being offered at 600 and the value of the appraisal comes in at like 575, that's a $25,000 difference. In the event that the buyer isn't agreeable to come up and you aren't able to come all the way down and you guys can't meet in the middle on that 25 grand, 12 and a half in negotiations for whatever reason, what happens is that buyer is able to leave and cancel their contract so long as they're within their appraisal contingency. And then they would get their earnest money back. They would get their deposit that they put to take the home off the market back. And so without like any reproach. And so it's important to understand that knowing where the appraisal is going to be can really be an important portion of getting your home sold. So we're going to go back to the sheet here. So what we've done first is I've taken the subdivision name, and if you're wondering where that is, it's just listed right here. It's not always accurate, so sometimes you want to check the geo map or remake a geo plot. It says it's Patrick and Durango, so I just came in here at unit ever whatever, and I put Patrick and Durango, and then I hit an asterisk behind it. That asterisk kind of gives me a wild card, so if I did Durag and didn't finish spelling it, it'll still give me the same like criteria that or answers or results that I punched in. It's kind of like helps you search stuff, or partial information is what it is. So I punched that in to find the subdivision, and the subdivision pulled up this. And then you can actually, if you wanted to spend the time to really figure it out, you could go into your the tax tab or your tax assessor's page and then punch in that subdivision, and it'll bring up every home and tell you how many homes are in it. But if I were to do a geo on this, just to be certain, it would look somewhat like this. This is the subdivision here. Oops, that click is not taking. It would look a little bit like this. We would completely go around the apartment complex that's right there, and then, oops, I didn't even need the shopping center. We won't pull that up in MLS anyways. Stop that. This, come on. Pull the map down, and then I connect it. I could have just free-handed that too. Like, for example, like, this won't do anything if I leave that. So anyways, but that's the exact subdivision right here. So if I come back into the criteria and get rid of that, it should give me the same exact amount of results, which is 5, and it does so. So now I have the exact subdivision. And most of the time, like 99.9% of the time, the geoplotting is correct, meaning that if you draw a thing around it, the person didn't input the address to over here. Like usually it's correct. So doing the geomap is good. The subdivision is great to start with. And sometimes you'll notice like like just roof shapes and footprints of homes. Like obviously these are smaller, these are slightly bigger. So you could tell that like these would probably, if they were built same time period and had the same quality, would be worth a little bit more, being that they're on larger lots and that they're larger construction, depending on what they are. So anyways, we come back in, we look at the results. This is what's showing us has happened in the last 6 months or 180 days. Excuse me. And what we have is active, under contract, comp only sold in case someone sold it not through the MLS but still added it, and then sold in the last 180 of single family detached. That's all I have. It's the only criteria I have. And then I have the map, so I know I'm looking in the right place. And then in here we have one that's under contract. Looked like they started at 659. They're on the market for 195 days. You can check their listing here too. It's kind of like an MLS class for you. It has a lot. So you look at the MLS number, you'll see when it was listed. So here's the old number. So that just look at the date and you'll see that that was from the old time. So in 2018 it had sold, or went into history. So 2017 it sold, and then a year later it automatically classified itself into the history zone of the MLS. Now you're looking at, okay, so now you're understanding this is active. This went active is the A right there at 659. They went to 649 a month later or a few weeks later. Then they went to 619 2 months later in November. And then they went from six. So these are called price reductions. They went from 619 or price adjustments to 579. Huge jump there. And you would have thought that would have sold them. But then a month later, they went from this price to the 570 to the 5449. And then it went under contract at the 554.9. So now you can see kind of what happened there on that listing and why it took 195 days when all these are under 80. Right? All these are under 3 months. That one's over 6 months. So you had this one at Allen Cove at 435, which happened in February recently. You have a 575 for a 1,400 square foot. Now this doesn't have the square footage change. So if I know what I know, which is that this one is 3,160 square feet, as you can see right here. So if you're like, okay, that one's 36, the subject property, the one we're trying to figure out the value for, or where it should be listed at, that one you're noticing come in at 3,160 square feet. So here's two model matches in size, except unfortunately one of them sold in like September of last year, and so that market's gone. It's a different market now, so appraiser may or may not use that for value. It's at 675, so it would certainly help us a ton. Then we've got one more recently, 9, 10, 11, 2 months after that. This one sat on the market for 2 months, and that one went for 625, and this is a model match as well. Slightly bigger yard, but that doesn't matter so much. This one looked like this. I'm sure everyone knows what it looks like if they're the homeowners and have been searching in this area. And then here's the 675. Paver stone driveway, 3-car garage, pool in the back. Yeah, looks nice. So anyways, those are the in-neighborhood comps, but I don't have anything recent, and this one is a little bit smaller than I want it to be. It's a 3160 to a 2951, but I would still, you could still use it as a comp, and an appraiser could even make an adjustment on that one if they wanted to get it to the right place. So in terms of making it more equitable to the property or equal to the proper subject property, meaning they can adjust the price by a few percentages calculations, and then like, oh, times 3%, and then for X amount of square footage, and then they'll add that on there. But anyways, so we'll keep going on. So this is the first set of comps. This is what we're seeing. We're seeing something around like 625, maybe 675 if ours is really dazzling, has a large yacht, it has a pool, etc., etc. We're not really seeing anything else. Allen Cove, and again, this is just our subdivision. That's a 1,400 square foot. That's too small. Here's another 2951. So those are what we've got in the direct subdivision. So this is what an appraiser would want most, just so everyone knows. An appraiser is going to want 3 model matches in the same subdivision in the last 3 months, which is really hard to ask for. So if they can't find that, then sometimes they'll stretch out a little further. And this is for very homogeneous homes, like cookie cutter homes. We have a lot of track homes here in Las Vegas, so doing the comps on these types of things is a lot easier than being in, say, like a beach city in Florida or in Southern California, where there's entire neighborhoods full of custom homes. You got a 4-story next door to a 1-story. Like, none of it makes any cents, right? Whereas here, it's a lot easier to find a more perfect comparable property. But sometimes you can't find one in the last 3 months, so they'll go back a few months further and try to figure out what the market had did in that time and then adjust up or down. Or they'll go to a neighborhood that's closest in age, style, and size, that's as close to it as possible in the same geographic area, and then they'll try to find comps there. So if I or so they can either go back in time, which they don't really like to do if they don't have to, because interest rates make huge impacts on the market overnight. So it's important to understand. Here's the next thing that we can look at: is this is what we as real estate agents do as a larger or a greater like comp area, or what I like to call the buyer search. So this is what a buyer's searching right here. It's usually like 5 miles larger than one neighborhood. It's really rare in the last decade of selling homes that I get somebody that was like, hey, I need to have this one little neighborhood. Just Lamplight Village or just the Ridges, right? Nowhere else. So it's not really common. Most of them search in a huge area like the Southwest. Some of them even search like, here, I'll show you. This is actually a more common search, but for comp's sake, I'll go into that little rectangle a little bit more. So most people will do this, the entire Southwest. Right, we're not going to use that. That's too broad, way too far. Some people will say, Kyle, I want the entire west side. And then they'll do this entire west side, north and south. So everyone's got their own shapes, but they're usually larger areas. But for comp's sake, I do want to dip into this so you can see why I did this rectangle this way. First of all, if you don't know Las Vegas very well, this area right here is Summerlin. So at Wallapai, where it turns, they recently annexed this land. So unless you've been in the game a while, you probably wouldn't know much about this. But they recently added and traded this land with the federal government, BLM land, which is now called the Cliffs. So this little section is Summerlin, which wasn't really Summerlin, and this is all Summerlin. So I don't want to add a master planned community into these comps. The next thing is I've got Sienna up here, which is an age restricted one. And so I don't really want any age restricted. Fortunately, I know there's nothing age restricted in here, so I didn't go into the criteria when making this and put not age restricted, which is something I can do. But look, watch. We'll put this in and it shouldn't do anything. Is not. See, all 26. So it was irrelevant because I already knew there was no age restricted communities. But if you don't know where the age restricted communities are, put that in. You don't want to factor those into your comps unless you're doing age restricted properties, which just means older or senior communities older than a certain age. So anyways, let's go back to the map and explain this, why I use this. This is like Spanish trails and stuff and heights. So we're not going to use any of that because that's a luxury community that is older in age than actually a lot of this stuff, but it is completely separate. It's got its own HOA. So we're not going to use that. In here, a lot of enterprise. So understand our property here, the subject properties here, and 3 of the comps we're seeing are from here, Hayes Cove, and that was that one. So 3 of them on this sheet will be something that we've already seen. And then there's some more over here and more over there. And so I wanted to get as similar of stuff as possible to what's here. Like just some regular old tract homes, which is easily, like all this is easily similar. You could just tell by looking at it from the aerial view. Okay, there's all tract homes. They all look pretty cookie cut. All looks the same. None of them have monster lots. They're not ranches. They're not in an HOA community. Like here's Roaders Ranch. We're not going to put that in there. I'm not going to use all these ranch style homes in here or down here. So now that you get the gist of why I've chose this area, I'm looking for the most similar homes. Understand this crucial component. If an appraiser cannot find what he's looking for, like the identical match in the same neighborhood, maybe it's a custom home. It's got a built sauna in the backyard. It's got a detached guest house, 4-car garage. It's got an RV bay. It's got a pool, sauna, separate outdoor barbecue. That's a lot of additional things that do change the value. Now, your paint and your cabinetry and your flooring only change so much. A new roof only adds so much value because every home is presumed to have a roof that works. And they're all presumed to have flooring. So if you spent 20 grand on your Burmese teakwood instead of 2 grand for your bathroom, you probably are not going to get that 20 grand out of that when you resell it. So it's important to understand which things appraisers give value to and which things appraisers do not give value to. So one thing that an appraiser would give value to is a garage bay, so a whole separate door and place for a car to park its garage. That could be probably 5, 10, 15 grand, 20 grand worth of value depending on the product. If it's a multi-million-dollar product, that could add 20 grand to it. If it's just a regular $300,000 house, it could add another 10,000 to it, but it certainly doesn't add zero. And so that's a thing that gets directly ascribed value. But understand, an appraiser does not want to have to add and make all these subtractions and calculations and pull all these pieces to make the comp. What they would rather find is a more identical comp that might be a little bit further. So for example, say we had a hyper custom home like I just described right here, we might do a way bigger search area, and then we're going to start going into the criteria and trying to find that most specific house. So with that understanding, welcome to the criteria page. Here on the criteria page, you're going to see I have a bracket of size. So you're like, how do I know which homes to look at? How do I find the most similar one? Well, first of all, size is the most important thing. If you had a pyramid, and I don't have the graph for it right now, I'd love to show it to you, but the bottom is square footage. There's location. Location is first, obviously. You can't change that. Location adds the most value. Square footage is the next most important thing, and then the features and benefits and upgrades. So if they can find that same house elsewhere, they will. So now I have a larger area, or the buyer search area, and that's 2,700 square feet to 3,500. Now I just took 2% of 31, and I took the 31 and went down 400 and went up 300. You see I made a bracket around our specific size of home. That way I'm looking at homes a little bit bigger and a little bit smaller, but not wildly bigger. You can't go to me and go, Kyle, my home's 1,400 square foot. This is a 3,600 square foot. Those are not comparable. One's wildly smaller than more than half as small. Doesn't make sense. We don't comp those, nor would an appraiser. It's not how we do value. Square footage is almost more important than the bedrooms. So if you have two homes, people are like, oh, I got a fourth bedroom and he only had a third bedroom. I'm like, that might give you like $2,500 on an adjustment if they're looking to make that adjustment. But to the appraiser, they're going to be looking more at the square footage. They want to understand, like, what if there's someone who wants a 5,000 square foot 6-bedroom, and then there's someone who wants a 5,000 square foot 5-bedroom with bigger bedrooms? To each their own. Someone might want bigger rooms with less common area. Someone might want more common area and smaller rooms. Everyone has different preferences, but the square footage will determine more than the room count. Bathrooms do add, obviously, that is a featured benefit that will add direct money if one comp doesn't have it and the other does. Now, I didn't put bedrooms and I didn't put bathrooms. All I have is a square footage bracket. I have sold in the last 6 months. Single family detached homes only. And then the next one I have here in Las Vegas, we don't usually comp a 1-story with a 2-story. So that's just something that we don't do. So in this instance, I have a 2-story listing. So I'm going to punch in 2 stories, and I'm only going to want to see 2-story listings. So now as you comb through the results, you're going to see here's what's active on the market. So now I know what our competition looks like. Like if I'm to list this home tomorrow, who am I on the market with for this same type of product? So I come in here to under contract, no show, and show to see if there's anything in escrow. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4 currently in escrow. And I'll highlight them so we can see them a little bit better, and I'll blow up the screen for you. So now what we're looking at is we have this one that's a 3,200 square foot on a half of an acre with a swimming pool and a spa. So it's got some more features and benefits. Ours doesn't have a pool, it doesn't have a spa, it's not on a half acre. It's on like less than a quarter acre. And so with that being said, we would look at it and go, okay, so obviously we know we'd need to take money off the price of this. If they were both very similar, we'd need to take money off of this one because it has some features that we don't have. But it's not a good match, in my opinion. Now I've got a 3,000 square foot 5-bedroom with no pool. It's a little bit smaller. It sold for $556. It's on West Diablo. I want to check the area first by clicking the map. And by the way, me doing this would be a lot faster. It usually takes 30 minutes to do some easy comps and an hour to do some really, really tough comps. Like, tough comps means it's extremely unique property in an area where there's nothing really near it similar. That's a tougher comp. So, even luxury, like luxury listings is more difficult. This is just for kind of a middle range property. So this one said it's 556. I noticed there was nothing there when the photo happened. So that makes me wonder if it was a new build. So I'll go here. It's a 2022 build. So for the record, ours was a 2018 or something like that. So it's still in the realm a little bit of age. But again, it's a new build, so they paid a premium for that. Now, I know that these are in escrow. Here's a 529 and 544, but these are all a little bit smaller by a couple hundred square feet. This one does have a pool. We'll take a look at it. This one's in like the same builder that did Crystal Springs. Or not Crystal Springs, sorry, Crystal Bay properties. We're on Peaceway and Fort Apache. Same architectural layout too. A little bit dated, but a little bit upgraded. So pretty cool house. Let's get out of there, bring you back to the regular view. So now as we continue to look at this, it's important to know, like, who are we competing with? So if you were to say list this property at 600 so as to expose it to everyone looking at 600 to 700 and everyone looking at 500 to 600 to open it up to two markets, that's a whole nother speech on hard line pricing and vanity pricing we're not going to get into. But if I were to look at it this way in terms of what's active, and I'll show you, here's all the actives, the green ones. We have, for this size of home that's a two-story in this area, we have 8 other active listings going from $900,000 at 300 a square all the way down to 500K on 514 and as low as 163 feet a square foot. So this is who we'd compete with. Now, talking about if we listed at 600, we would be priced directly in the middle of everything that's active, so long as not more stuff came on the market, and hopefully you would want less stuff to come off the market. So in 3 weeks from now, there's not 8 competitors, there's only 6. And in 3 weeks from then, there's only 2. So that's what happens when inventory is decreasing, which it is doing right now and has done so for the last 3 months. And our days on market is decreasing as well now. This, by the way, this video is from March 15th, 2023. Thank you for taking the time to watch it. I'm going to start wrapping up here since we're running a little bit long. You're at 21, so thanks for watching with me. Anyhow, as we continue to trot through this, this is where you'd be figuring out your pricing, and then we'd look at talking about sales. The appraisers are only going to look at what's sold. And if I were appraising, I would first come and look at it and do 0 to last 100 days, like 3 months. And that gives me 16 matches. So this is the most accurate snapshot of what buyers are paying in this current area for the last 100 days. So it looks like this. You've got a 650 that started at 734. He's reduced heavy. It took him 44 days. Now I can run you the average days on market, which helps people understand what's a realistic time for selling. Here's what's sold in the last few months with, the current interest rates. So I come in and do just a quick CMA, which is a comparative or comparable market analysis, which just basically means it runs some number averages for you. But they're very helpful in understanding. So homes in this area of this size and style in the last 100 days, they sold for, on average, 98.3% of their sales price to list price. But remember, that involved the reducing. Headward down. So here is your max sold price was the 670, or list price was 675 was the most they listed it for. And they averaged listing prices at 575 and then sold price at 568, 6250. So this is the one I would look at right here, these two, your average and median sold prices. So it says that they're looking at now more around 555, 568, 550 to 560. So this is where it's telling you that it's likely to sell. And if you were to list it at these prices, you would list it 2% or so above that. And it would not need to be reduced. So anyways, as we keep looking at this, it says the average for these is $29.59 though. So the problem with that is that technically all these numbers are predicated on a home that's 200 square feet smaller than yours. Almost 260 square feet, 70 square feet. So that is a significant difference when looking at these numbers and going, well, that doesn't make sense. That's because part of that is because of them being smaller. As you'll notice, 29, 29, 29, 29, 29, 27, 29, 28. But you only got one 3100, which is still smaller than yours, and he went for 635. So we're going to want to look at what that looks like. 3-car garage, just like yours. Nice tile, beautiful kitchen, just like yours. Decent backyard, not too big. Nice and clean, move-in ready. Does have some carpet upstairs, but it looks like it's in okay shape. So this is a great comp right here at 635. Took them 115 days. They sold last year in December. Let's take a look at what really sold them at that price. We'll go to the history. So it looks like they started, follow the MLS number all the way down, halfway down the page. So they started in July, and then they reduced it in July, 10 days later. So they were fast. Then they got into contract at 670, but then they fell out of contract and went back on the market just 9 days later, or 6 days later, sorry, on the 9th. Then they went back on the market and had to reduce down to 650, and it was at 650 where they were put into contract again. So this is a good comp to keep for when the appraiser wants to come at us and say that value is such and such. So that's my first comp, is on Notting Hill 8089 something or other. Here's my second comp and third comp at 675 and 625 when talking to an appraiser. Does it mean that the home will sell there? We've already looked at the entire area around it. It probably wouldn't, but I can also see if I can adjust this to 3,000 to 3,500 or 3,650 and see what happens. See, I don't have any homes in this area that are in that square footage that are similar, that have sold in the last 100 days as a 2-story in this size in that entire area. So I could even come in here and see if I can find more. I've got a few more, but I wouldn't want that one. I'd want to exclude that. I've got a 600. So let's look at these results and see what we got, and then run the numbers on it. And then CMA. See, now we have an accurate representation of a mixture between the two, because now these are showing mostly, let's see with my square footage. So we've got these comps being swayed by a 3,500, and you got the average is 32. So now we have an average square footage larger than the house, which is showing us that the average is 700 and the median, the most common sale, is at 617. So this is looking more accurate at around 617 in terms of just looking at the slightly smaller ones and now the slightly bigger ones to try to get a good picture, since we can't seem to find any that are its exact size in its close area. So at the end of the day, looking at this, I would probably start the listing price at 625 on it, knowing the market that we're in. And if it doesn't have bites quickly, or at least a ton of activity, then we'd work on getting it adjusted to a better location, knowing that it could sit and languish all the way down to the 575, or it could get numerous offers in the first week of listing and go well over 625. And that's the sort of uncertainty of the new market. And when you have the best marketing already applied to it, and the best photos and the best outreach to it, then the simple thing happens is that that the market is telling you. And that's not me, your agent, saying, oh, it's not worth that, or no one's willing to buy that. It's the market saying, oh, well, we didn't find it worthwhile to drive to, and then if we did, we didn't find it worthwhile making an offer on. And so the question now leaves just, how long is this going to take? So even in this higher echelon of or larger size homes, which has a $1.2 million comp in there, skewing the whole thing, obviously. But these look a lot more indicative too. We got a 545, a 635, 465, a 600. This is what an appraiser would call all over the place. They're all over the place, making value a little bit tougher to determine. And so, with all this digested, I think we've come to a great conclusion of value on this. So you guys tell me what you think from looking at this, and that's pretty much the video for the day. So awesome.